Hello and welcome to Arts Alive. I'm Brian Egan and we're recording from my home shop studio today, and we've got a great project in mind for you. But before we get started, I want to introduce my helper here. This is my wife, Chris. She's our videographer, editor, and chief safety officer. So the project that we have in mind, here's a photo of the finished project. It's what I call a stonescape. It's a landscape where most of the materials are stone. There's some natural wood in here as well. And I've already started this project, and I have it to a maybe half complete point right here where I've got the background, which is white Carrara marble tiles, and then the foreground, which is Oregon black walnut. And so we're going to be putting some mountains in here that are made of slate. And so we're going to back up a little bit and go through the process of the initial layout and show you what it's about for cutting the wood and cutting the tiles. Okay, so we're going to start with some drawing here. I've just got some standard paper, nothing fancy. And our design is a little bit limited by the materials that we're using. So for instance, the marble tile is 12 inches, and that constitutes our sky. So I'm going to make a mark on here at the 12 inches, and I'm going to draw that all the way across our paper. And that line will be the bottom of our mountains. So the mountains I'm going to draw above the line here. It's kind of a free form in terms of dimensions, but I have a 60-degree triangle that I'm going to use for the angles of the mountains. I find that the 60 degrees works pretty well for this kind of project, and it's something I can duplicate easily when I get to cutting the tiles on the tile saw. So I've got several mountains here, and they're slightly different sizes. The mountains overlap so that when you're looking at it, it looks like one mountain is behind another. And again, no measurements here, it's just eyeballing what I think looks good on here. When I get to the end, I got a little dead spot, so I'm just going to add a little. So these mountains are going to be made of 100 pieces of tile, and the tiles are all going to be in this diamond pattern. I'm just putting them in here for illustration right now. And I've got 2 to 3 different colors of the tile. So I have some dark colors that will make up the lower parts of the mountain, and some lighter brownish tiles for the top. So just like you would see when you look up at the Cascades and you see the bottoms of mountains are all forested, they look darker than the stone at the top of the mountains. Each of these tiles is 1.5 inches wide. So I'm going to mark on here 1.5 inches and trace those 1.5 inch lines all across these mountains. Now, I'm not going to fill in all of the mountains with this grid right now, because you might get bored and leave me. So I'm just going to do the one mountain for now. Okay, now I'm also going to number each of these tiles so that after I cut them and put them up here, I've got the right tiles in the right place. There's more than one size of tiles, so it's very important that I'm accurate with that. Okay, so each of the mountains will get the grid drawn on them and get numbered for when we come back to this later. Another feature of mountains is that water runs out of them in the forms of streams and rivers. So we're also going to put a little free-form kind of river going through here. And this is the river itself. We're going to use a piece of limestone tile. It has kind of a watery pattern to it. And then we've got to the left and the right of the river is the foothills, foreground. And we're going to go ahead and draw a line on the top of that because that would not be a straight line. And again, freehand. And I'm carefully not going below the line that I put here at the bottom of the mountains because I don't want the intersection of the materials to be exposed. So that takes care of our major shapes here. Now I'm going to need to transfer these lines onto my piece of black walnut. And the way I do that, I have a piece of plastic film here. And I just trace the same lines that I just made right onto the plastic film. And then I take scissors and I cut that shape. I don't have to be real accurate with this because nobody has expectations that there's going to be perfect lines here, and nature doesn't make perfect lines anyway. I take my piece of walnut and I put that plastic over it. And I can move this around a little bit on here if I want to take advantage of grain features. Sometimes the grain of the wood looks like contour lines. So I'm going to just real softly pin this in place where I want it. And then I'll take a Sharpie and I'm going to follow the edge of my plastic film template. Going to go to the bandsaw next, where we're going to cut this out. Later we'll take this whole piece, send it to a thickness planer to reduce the thickness of it, and then we'll take routers and soften the edges and sanders and also relieve out the back of the material where it laps over the stone both at the top and along the river. Okay, we're ready to do some bandsawing, but first got to check our safety. So, safety glasses? Check. Ear protection? Check. We got a safety light fixture on here? Check. Videographer's wearing ear protection? Check. Okay. All right, so I need to do a little bit of adjustment on the saw here to make sure we're going to get a good clean cut on it. And this is kind of an awkward piece of wood. It's not going to want to saw real easily because it's not flat. But, all right, we're going to get noisy here. Okay, let's get rid of that for now. So, here's our black walnut foreground. We've got the river course over here, we've got the foothills here, and I'm going to need to make a cut here where it meets the frame. Now, after it's gone through the planer, we're also going to relieve some of the back side of this so that this part of the walnut will overlap the tile. So we're done with this for a while. Next will be cutting tile. Okay, we're ready to do some tile cutting. I need to make 2 cuts. The first one is just going to be a straight cut. I've got a stop here to maintain a distance of 1.5 inches between the edge of the tile and the blade, and I'm just going to do a straight cut through there. Afterwards, in order to cut my diamond tiles, I have a template here, and I'll be putting the tile into the template and shove it through in order to get that diamond shape. But before we do that, of course, we have to do our safety check. And you'll notice I'm wearing rubber gloves because this is a wet tile saw. As the saw starts to turn, it needs to stay wet. So there's a pump and water down here for that purpose. So we're going to get noisy again. Hold on to your seat. Yeah, this is a messy process. You can see that there's water dripping everywhere, but that's the only way you can cut tile, because if you use a dry saw, the blade overheats and it goes bad really quickly. This is a diamond tip blade, and it goes through the slate fairly easily. Slate is a rather soft stone, so it's easy to cut. So I'm going to take my stop out now because I don't need it for the next piece. And I've got a mark on my little template here to line up with the corner of this tile running into the blade at 60 degrees to give me my first cut. And then I'll slide this down and give it the second cut. Okay, so you can see I've got these diamond shapes all cut out, all perfectly the same size. Got 100 of these to cut. I'm not going to take up your time with cutting 100 of them, but basically that's what there is to it. And yes, it does appear that my fingers are close to the saw blade, but this is a very safe mechanism. This is a professional style blade, and there really wasn't any need to me to be worried about getting hurt as long as I'm following protocols on how to use it. So, okay, next we're going to start assembling mountains. Let's build some mountains. But first, let's go over our safety protocol for this part of our project. So I'm not using any power tools here, so we don't need much. I'm wearing rubber gloves simply because the adhesive caulk that we're using to glue the mountain tiles down to the marble, I don't want to get it on my fingers. It's really sticky stuff, it's hard to get off, and I don't want to spread it onto any of my pieces. I'm wearing safety glasses, but only because these particular safety glasses have magnifiers in the bottom of the lenses, which will help me in making my adjustments of the tile as I start placing them. Here's where we are so far. We've got our sky in place. We've got the black walnut cut and fit and glued into place. We've got our limestone river running through here. The black walnut has been rounded on the edges using a router, and I also created a recess back here so I can slip the tiles behind here and hide the edges. I've got my tiles laid out per mountain, so mountain 1, 2, 3, and 4. Remember back when I did the layout, I created this with the numbers of the tiles in each location, and I'll follow that as we go along with the installation. So again, here's what our finished project will look like. You'll notice that mountains number 1 and 3 are taller than number 2 and 4. Accordingly, the size of the tile per mountain is different, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we start doing the installation. But that's also to give an idea that number 2 and number 4 are background mountains. Numbers 1 and 3 are foreground mountains. So it gives a sense of depth and a more natural look to the scene. I'm going to start in the left-hand corner here with tiles number 1, 2, and 3. So I've got each of the tiles marked 1, 2, and 3. These 3 tiles I glued together beforehand, and the reason for that is that I'm working in this corner where the tile is fitting into a recess this direction and a recess that direction. And once I get them in there, if they were separate, I'd have a really hard time making adjustments with those. So that's our starting point, and each of the tile will get a little bead of this adhesive caulk on the back of it, and I have to be careful not to get too much, because if I do, I will create an ooze, which could be seen in the final product if I'm not careful. So I stick that one in there, and then I start building around it. Carefully placing each tile and lining the corners up with the last tile to go in. I will be able to make some adjustments to this along the way. This adhesive caulk sets up in 30 to 40 minutes, so that's how much time I need to make adjustments. After that, they're not going anywhere. Now that last tile I'm putting in here is the last one that goes in a recess on the frame side trim. And getting those first few tiles laid up is so important because it affects everything that happens beyond here. So get those just right before we move on. If I make a mistake here with alignment, even a small mistake at this stage turns into a large mistake as we work our way across the board. People ask me sometimes how I can work upside down like this, and I can because I spent years as a building contractor, and I would look at blueprints upside down as I explained them to my clients. So I got pretty good at it, not realizing that it would pay off in a video like this where I'm trying to show the viewers my work. As I get to the top, the last few rows towards the top, the tiles are a slightly different color. So the bottom tiles are kind of a blue-green, as if it was forested. And then above that, the tiles are more of a gray-brown, as if you were above timberline and you're just looking at stone. So we're getting to another tricky part here, because we're at a point where the sky tiles, the river tiles, and the wood come together with the slate, and it's really hard to get all of that to meet in the way that I want it. I can See, already I've got some alignment problems going on, so I'm going to get the last few tiles here set, and then I'll go around and adjust. Okay, so we're going to start on mountain number 2. And as I mentioned, these tiles are slightly smaller. And so where the 2 mountains connect, the base of the diamond for the small mountain tiles are offset from the corners on the large tiles, and that's okay. That's part of the plan. All right, so working in the corner here is a little bit tough because, like the beginning corner, I can't get my fingers into the recesses very easily to put the tiles in, so gotta be real careful here. All right, we made it to number 99, our last tile. And I'm going to have to nip just a little bit off of the corner here. So slate is a fairly soft tile, and I need to just take a little bit off. I can just use sandpaper to do that. And it may take a couple of trial fits to get it just there, and need a little bit more off there yet. That's pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and make sure everything's aligned the way that I want it before I do a final fit on that particular piece. Looking pretty good, but there's a couple of gaps here. So we got all of our mountains set. Mountain 1 looks perfect. Mountain 2 is pretty close. We'll do a final little adjustment here. Yeah. Mountain 3, I think I don't need to touch anything there. Mountain 4 looks good as well. So we've got one more piece to go on, and it is a piece of Padauk wood. I've cut that out in a circle and shaped the outside, and it's going to act as a sun. So we're going to put that up in the upper left-hand corner here between these 2 mountains. Well, here's our finished stonescape. We've given it a place of honor in our home. We're very happy with the way that it's turned out. We hope you enjoyed your time with me today. If so, please let the folks at the Art Center know about it. Better yet, become a member of the Art Center. You can always go to theartcenter.net and make a donation to help support this wonderful organization. Thank you for joining me.